Mario Kart Wii custom tracks have existed for around 15 to 16 years, and I've been making them for about 1 year. And in that year, I have my fair share of custom tracks. And because you guys hit over 10 likes, I will be teaching you guys how to make a custom track. Here we go. Oh, and by the way, I'm not the best custom track creator out there, so some of the methods I use may not be the best, but it will get the job done. First thing you're going to want to do is to go to this link on screen now, or go to the description and go to it. Then scroll down until you see 3.6 or 4.0. I personally use 4.0, but it's up to your preference. Once you pick your version, it will bring you to this page where you're going to download the MSI for Windows, and make sure you are downloading the desired version. Once you've downloaded the MSI, run the application and do the install process. I can't show you guys because I already have it downloaded, but it shouldn't be too hard. Now is probably a good time to mention this, but this video will not be covering the process after Blender. There will be more episodes in the future covering that. And from now on, there will be an input display at the bottom left corner in case you saw me do an action that was not mentioned. Before we do anything, go to Edit, Preferences, Key Map, and change it from Blender to Blender 27. Now that we set up the key map, let's get some of the controls out of the way. So when most people start, they try moving it like this, and then give up. But if we just go to this button and make sure we selected the object we would like to move, it becomes very easy. But we are not stuck selecting the same buttons on the sidebar. We can use hotkeys on our keyboard to automatically go to the tool. For the move tool, the hotkey is G. Think of G like grab to help you remember it. And when you press G, you can also press X, Z, and Y to lock the movement to that axis. Same thing with this button. This button rotates whatever you have selected, and the hotkey is R. You can also lock the axis to XYZ as well. And this button scales the object you have selected in the XYZ axis, or all of them at once. And the hotkey is S. So we've covered all the hotkeys and tools for object mode. Now we need to move on to edit mode. Edit mode will be the main mode you will be using, so pay attention. If you're like me and you don't want to take this long to press the button manually, the hotkey is tab. Edit mode has a lot more tools to choose from, so it may get overwhelming. And I will be using words like vertice, edge, and face, so here's what they mean. A vertice is kind of like a corner or a point. A edge is the connection between 2 or more vertices, and a face is a connection of at least 3 edges and 3 vertices. But you can also remove the face if you would like to. It's a little confusing, but after a bit, you shouldn't even have to think about it. Well, congratulations, you just passed the 5th grade. Now let's actually look at some of the tools we will be using. The first one is called extrude. Whatever you have selected, will extrude. The hotkey for this is E. And as always, you can lock the axis to XYZ. And from now on, I'm not going to mention if you can lock the axis to XYZ because it should be pretty easy to tell whether you can use it or not. And hint, most of them allow you to lock the axis to XYZ anyway. Next is loop cut. Loop cut allows you to add more segments to a face that has 4 and only 4 vertices, also known as a quad, and the hotkey is Ctrl R. This next one is called the knife. The knife is kind of like loop cut, except it's more customizable and can be used on faces with 5 or more vertices, also known as an n-gon, and the hotkey is K. Now this bevel tool you won't be using a whole lot, but when you select an edge or edges, it basically makes it round. And you can increase or decrease the amount of segments with the scroll wheel. And the hotkey is Ctrl B. And finally, the last tool is called Inset Faces, which does what the name implies, and the hotkey is I. We are finally done looking at the tools. Now let's try to make our first custom track. First, let's delete the default items Blender gives you. You can do this by highlighting everything and then either right click and hit delete, or you can press DEL or X on your keyboard to save some time. Now head over to Add, Mesh, and then add a plane. By selecting the 2 front vertices and pressing Ctrl plus left click, you extrude the 2 vertices to your cursor. We can use this to make a layout which will be much easier than doing it manually. When you get to this point and you don't know how to connect it, here is how. By selecting the 4 vertices you would like to connect, and then by pressing F on your keyboard, it will fill the gap for you. We can use the loop cut tool to make a quad, which will be our finish line. Then we can select some of the faces we would like to raise, so our track isn't just flat and boring. And we can add some ramps because it will make our track feel more smooth and fast-paced. Then we can add some of these raised edges on corners because that's what they do sometimes in real life. Now we can add some curbs at the other end of the corner by extruding the vertices one by one inside a little bit. Now if you look at these corners, you will notice that they are very sharp and edgy. So if we add some loop cuts at the seams, we can make it look more round. Once you added all the smooth corners you desired, we can start adding materials. You can add materials whenever you want, but I like to add them because I can see which part of the track I'm working on clearly. When you are ready to start, make sure you have the object selected and you are on this material tab. Now you can head over here and hit new. When you do that, a new material should appear. You should rename the material to something that resembles the object because we will need to return to this on a later episode. Once you're done with that, click the material and head over to the shading tab. Okay, now on the bottom window, you can either hit add, texture, image texture, or you can simply press Shift plus A and start typing out the word image and it will find the result. Then select the color dot on the image node and connect it to base color, like this. Then hit open on the image node and select a texture. Once you find a texture you like, you might notice it looks a little stretched and overall just bad. We can fix this by pressing U on our keyboard and select either reset or unwrap. Generally, for the roads, we will be using the reset option. Now I have to warn you here, UV mapping is one of the hardest skills to learn in Blender to at least become decent at. I wouldn't even say I'm decent at it yet, but I can at least get the job done. You can see some of the textures aren't following the path of the track. We can fix this by using the UV editor. The UV editor is just like the 3D editor, except it's 2D. So most of the hotkeys I told you before apply here as well. Once you fix all the bad road UVs, you can start on the next texture if you like. Now I'm not going to show you every UV map I did because that would take way too long, but just start experimenting with the reset and unwrap options. Once you finish all your textures, you can add some support beams because unless this is Rainbow Road, floating objects won't look the best. And now set every individual vertice Z position to 0. This will be useful later. If you're having this issue, here's what you can do to fix it. First, raise what you have selected. It doesn't have to be a lot, but make sure it's not too little. Then select everything that was a part of your extrude. Then lower it until the top of your extruded road matches with the normal road, like this. At the seam, you should see a triangle sort of shape. You want to merge the bottom vertice and the top vertice of the extruded road on both sides. And to merge vertices, you need to select at least 2 and then press M. Once you finish that, you can select the 2 vertices you are left with and extrude them back to where you want them. I always end up with a triangle, so what I do to make it a quad is delete the existing triangles and fill it by selecting the 4 vertices and pressing F. Now do the same thing like we did on the other wall. Select each vertice individually and change the Z coordinate to 0, or whatever your floor height is. Now let's add some off-road in the middle. To do this, select the inside vertices and press F to fill. Make sure to not select too many vertices at a time because it might not work properly. It can also be a very tedious process sometimes, but I believe in you. Once you finish, you can head over to the shading tab again and apply the texture using the texture node. Once you found the texture you like, head over to the UV editing tab and select all, then press U, then unwrap and either scale it up or scale it down. Right now, our track is just sitting in the void, so let's give it the illusion that it's on top of the ground. My method for doing this is selecting some of the outer vertices. Make sure the vertices are at the lowest Y position unless you're looking for a challenge. It does sometimes give better results, but it's not required. When you select the vertice you think this is good for, extrude it outward, like a lot. Make sure it's how you want it though. When you do this to all the vertices you want, it should look something like this. It should kind of look like an outer square. Now just fill in each mini square by selecting each vertice and pressing F to fill, just like we practiced in the intro. Once you fill it all in, you can retexture it to be grass or whatever texture you want. And since we already added the grass texture, we can go to the right on the material tab and select it and hit apply. And make sure you're in edit mode when you do this. When you do that, your texture will most likely look horrible. To fix this, go to UV editing, select all on the left window, press U and hit unwrap, just like from before. Now if we want to add a texture to this wall, we can do the same thing from before. If you don't remember how to load a texture into Blender, just go back in the video. Once we hook it up, our texture will once again look horrible. To fix this, go to UV editing and unwrap it. Then mess with the scaling and rotating just to get it right. UV editing can be very difficult and tedious, but if you've gotten this far, I believe you can do it. We are now done with the modeling and texturing. Now we can get ready to export. And warning, you should save your Blender file here, because after this it can get messy. Also, the model export method is subject to change because I'm trying to figure out the best ways to make custom tracks. To start, if you have multiple objects on the right, select all of them and hover over the model window and press Ctrl+J. If you already have one object, there is no need to do that. Now in your one object, go into edit mode and select everything by pressing A. When you do that, then press P and hit by material. Now I recommend renaming all the objects you made based on what material they are. This will help us in a later video. Now go to the Scene tab and set the units to 100. And last, go to the top left and hit File, Export, FBX, and then select Mesh, and change the drop down from Auto to Copy. Now set the scale to 0.25 and hit Export. So that's going to do it for this video. I'll come back to you with more tutorials in the future, so maybe you can start making custom tracks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.